Alright, welcome back everyone. My name is Dustin, and in the last video we went over a bunch of the engine and editor updates that have been done in the back end. And we also talked about how we're going to want to start working on the exporting or packaging the game. So I've been working on that in the back end, and in doing so I noticed that there were some issues with how we are doing our logging and log display. So for this video we're going to make some changes to the logger and add some improvements to the log display. So let's get started. As you can see here, just by looking at it, it's not rendering everything that we want. It's like cutting it off. And I don't like that. I don't think that's how it should be done. Also, let's take a little look at the code. Okay, so that's the log display. And we're going to want to close all these. We only need the display right now. Let's go to the log display.h, log display.cpp. First thing I want to take a look at, let's make this a bit bigger. First thing I want to take a look at is this get logs function here. So as you can see, we're waiting for the log to be added here, and then we're resetting it manually here. Now these are just macros that are inside of the logger class itself. However, when we're logging in the runtime or the packaged build, we're not going to have a way to reset this flag, or we're not going to want to have to reset it manually. This needs to be done on its own. As I've been working on this, I've noticed that there's a better way for us to handle this. So the first thing we're going to want to do is remove these functions and the actual log being added from the logger. We're going to remove that flag. It's not going to be needed. And if you really do want to have some type of notification that a log has been added, then it's easier probably just to trigger an event and have listeners for that event rather than to hold on to a flag and have to manually reset that flag. First thing we're going to do, let's go and remove these. So if we go to the logger.h here, we have these two macros. I'm still going to want to keep these two, but we can get rid of these first two here, log added and reset added. We'll get rid of those totally because they're only used in the log display. That means that those were added just for the log display. Well, we don't want that because the logger is its own entity, it's its own library. So if it's added just for the log display, that means that the log display depends on these being there, and we want to not have that dependency. Okay, so let's go down here, and we're actually going to, change the whole way this is done here. I don't like this anymore. It's just one of those things I haven't got around to changing. So we're going to want to change all of these. Put everything on a different line. I think it's cleaner this way. And then if you want, you can add a comment per each one. Previously, I thought it was cleaner just to add them in a row, but in reality, it's not because, so say I want to say, put a comment here. I can just put it above and say, new log was added or something like that. So if you're hovering over this, it should give you the comment. New log was added. So you can add these things in, and IntelliSense will automatically let you see what that is. But we don't even need this log added anymore, so we're going to completely remove that. Okay, so what that's going to do is these functions aren't going to be needed, so we can get rid of these as well. And anything else in this file? Nope. But we do need to go to the CPP and the INL file and remove everything there. Be in our logger library. So here, logger, we need to go to source, get the CPP, and we need to go to the INL. Okay, so from there, let's scroll down. Where is this used? Here. So log added is true. We don't need that anymore. And we don't need that for all the functions. So let's go through and remove that. That. Great. More right there. Cool. Let's go to the CPP file. I believe it's in there. Well. And these are for the Lua one. So whenever we're doing a message from Lua. Yeah. Cool. All right. So now that we have that, we can go back to our log display, and these don't exist anymore. So we're going to have to remove these. Let's remove this. And we can remove this. Cool. Move this over. All right. So now that those flags are gone, we have another issue. We're always clearing this here. So we're not going to want to do that anymore, because when we're clearing it, we're clearing the text buffer and the offsets every single time a new log is added, and then repopulating the logs. There's no need for us to do this. We can handle this a better way. So a better way for us to handle this would be to keep an index of the current logs and then check against that. If more logs are added, then we will append to the buffer and offsets. So let's go to our log display.h and add that in. And we're going to change this as well. So we're going to grab all this, bring it down here. I'm going to start doing that with a lot of different things, is putting the private stuff at the bottom. It's the new style that I like. It's not a new style, but it's, I believe, previously I used to like the private at the top because then I could see my variables right away. However, it actually makes more sense to put it at the bottom so any users that are using it can see what's publicly available. Cool. Okay, and we're going to need our log index. So let's go int m log index. So we have our log index. So the log index is just going to keep track of where in our logs that we're currently pointing at, the most recent log that we have added to our text buffers and text offsets. So let's copy this over and go to the log display, and we'll just start this off as 0. Where's our constructor? Right here. Add that in as 0. Awesome. So looking at this as well, there's another thing that I want to change is how we're reversing the logs. This was so I could have the latest one at the top. This is unnecessary. Most log displays are done in ascending order. So we're going to change this as well. This can change this whole function. So now, in order to mimic the same thing we were doing before, where we were adding and removing the logs, we don't need to have that flag anymore, but we can check against the log index. So let's get the logs. Here, we can change this to const auto reference logs. That's going to give us our logs, and then we can go if logs.size is equal to m log index. Then we can just return. So it's all it's going to do now is check the size, and if the size is the exact same as the index, that means we already have all the current logs in our buffer, so we don't need to add anything. So now we want to loop through the logs. However, we want to start at the log index. Okay, let's change this here. We'll go size t I is equal to m log index I is less than logs.size plus I. Awesome. So we've changed that, and we're going to want to get the current log. So we go const auto reference log, and that log is equal to logs at I. Okay, and then we still want the old text size, and then we're going to append, right? And then let's append a new line. So let's go m text buffer dot append, not append f, append a new line. Cool. And then in our pushback, we can actually remove this +1 because we appended a new line. So now we have to adjust our log index because we've actually changed our index. So now I want to go m log index is equal to static cast int logs.size. Awesome. So that should update our index for us. So let's take a look at that and see if it works as is. I'm not sure. Oh, that's another thing. Right here in our clear function, we're going to want to clear the log index as well. So I'm going to go m log index is equal to 0. So if we do clear it, but we're not clearing it each time and we're not resetting the buffer each time, now we're only going to clear it when we actually press the clear button. So let's run this. All right, so we're just going to open a project. I already have this one set up. Open the project and load it. Cool, let's take a look at our logs. Awesome, so it's working, and now it spans the entire area of the window, which is great. There's another issue here. When we go down, it kind of bounces, and that's due to the clipper that we're using, and I have some changes that I want to do for that. But this is working for us, and that's great. So let's go to the scripts real fast. Main.lua. We have this here, and this is perfect because we adjusted our math constants now to not be changeable. All right, so they're read only. So what's going to happen is we're trying to assign pi or Scion2D constants to 10. So when we run this, it's going to actually give us an error. So let's actually try that now. In order to do that, we need to load a scene. Go back over here, and let's load a scene. Our tile map, just regular. Sure. So we have this one. And let's go back to our log so we can see how it's doing. And now it's actually going to append them at the bottom. Previously, we were doing it the other way around. We were reversing the log so we'd had the newest one at the top. I've changed that. The new ones just get applied to the bottom and we just look from there. So let's actually run the scene and we should get our error. Yeah, see how it didn't even run this, try to run the scene. So let's run it a few times just so we get the errors to move. All right, so down here, awesome. So it's appending the way we want. And let's take a look here. And it's attempt to modify a read-only table. So now that proves that that part works. Wonderful. So I actually want to add a few different things here. So all we have is our logs, and we have the ability to clear and copy. I want to add in the ability to filter the logs based on is it an info, is it a warning, or is it an error? And I also want to be able to add a search bar or a search query so it looks for a specific log. So let's do that now. Okay, so in order to add the filters in, we're going to have to add in some flags, and also I'm going to need a string for the search query. Let's go back to the log display and start adding in some flags. So we'll say bool mb show info, show warn, show error. We have those, and up here we'll put our string std string ms search query. Cool. And we'll move these over, start adding them in. We'll just copy the search query first. Let's go back to our log display, find the constructor. That is right here. So this, I believe, was before scroll. Search query here, and that's just going to be an empty string. And we have our auto scroll, and then we're going to have our mb show info. That's going to be true. These are all going to be start as true. And then we're going to have put this down here, mb show warn, true, mb show error, also true. So we're showing everything by default, okay? And let's go down to our draw function because we're going to change this a bit. So the first thing we're going to do is get logs, of course, and that's fine. But now we're going to want to add in some different controls. So we have our clear and our copy, and we're going to make some changes. So let's say logging controls, and we'll go I am GUI text. This is going to be for our search bar. Search. I'm going to say we're going to use this same line. I'm going to go I am GUI set next item width, and we're going to say 200 for this bar. It's going to be the search bar, and then we're going to want to do input text. I am GUI input text. Now there's two input texts we can use. Right now it's just using this one, which is using a char point buffer. However, we could use the one for stdlib. So if we go up to the top here, and we can include I am GUI stdlib. This will allow us to use strings, and it automatically would do the resizing for us. So let's go here, and it's just going to be our search. And we're going to want to have our query, and we're going to send in a pointer to this string. So s search query. That's it. That's all we have to do. So what I recommend actually is in a lot of places where we're using input text is to change it to this version, which automatically handles the buffer resizing for us. It handles the dynamic resizing. So I'm going to go through the entire project and start making changes where needed. Sometimes you might want to just use the char because it's doing its job. So that's going to be our search bar. Let's copy this same line, put it here, and I want to give a little space. F, and we go 8.f for the same line. And we're going to want to add in a checkbox. So I am GUI checkbox, and we're going to say space info. I'm putting a space there just to make it so it's not directly on the side of the checkbox. And then this is going to be for show info. Show info. Awesome. And we can copy both of these and change this to warn. Awesome. Paste again. Change this to error. Cool. And I believe we're auto scrolling, but I don't know if we're setting it anywhere. So we have MB auto scroll, but it's not anywhere where you can choose to it to not auto scroll or not. So let's actually just add that in as well. So right here beside the error, paste again. This one's just going to be auto scroll. Let's actually make that MB auto scroll. Awesome. So then we have our clear button. Let's actually copy this because we want this same line as well. Just go back up there. Same line. Let's move this one over a little bit more. 16.f. So we have our clear. And then we're going to do the same thing for our copy. Change the same line to use this one. Awesome. Okay, so before we make some changes here, we're going to actually remove this clipper. Let's see what these buttons look like. They're not going to do anything yet, but let's just take a look. Okay, so it didn't like that. Why? Because it doesn't know what a string is in log display. That's another thing we're going to do. We're going to actually make a PCH file or shared PCH library for all projects that are in this. And we'll be doing that over the next few videos, okay? We don't have to constantly include everything in the header file that's necessary. We'll be using the pre-compiled header. And we're going to do that with CMake. Include string. Good for now. And we'll try running it. And we'll open the same project. New project. Go in and just check out our logs. Awesome. So these aren't doing anything yet, but we have all this. It looks pretty good. I like it. All right. Now there is no separator here. We should probably add a separation line just to make it look a bit cleaner. Let's add in that separation line. So let's go back to the log display. And right before we begin, oh, there is a separator, but it looks okay. And so let's see if that same line did anything with that. I don't think it does. So go back in. Logs. Oh, it does. So the same line was putting it up at the top, and we don't want that. I want that separator to clearly distinguish between the top and the bottom. You could also do a draw toolbar to handle this, which is what we probably should do, but this is fine. Cool. Okay, so now we're going to want to change this here. So in our begin child, we're going to change this to actually be an if begin child here. And we can go down and grab all of this, put it in brackets. Cool. That's one thing I like. It'll automatically put it into brackets for us. So we have our push style var, and we have this clipper. Now the problem with the clipper is it can bounce sometimes, and I want to change this to not use the clipper and just use the text offset size. Okay, so let's get rid of the clipper. So we'll have to get rid of this. Keep that text offset size up here because we're going to use it. Get rid of this while loop. Scroll down, get rid of the clipper and get rid of that. Cool. And let's move everything over because we're still going to need this for loop, or we're just going to make some change. Cool. Bring this up. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to get rid of this line number here. Any clipper stuff all has to be removed. So now we're going to go through and loop through all the offsets. So let's go out int I is equal to 0. I is less than. Grab this text offsets dot size. Plus plus I. Cool. So now anywhere that has line number, we're actually going to want to make some changes here. So we're going to have our line start is our text offsets, blah, blah, blah. And this was going to be just I. And we're going to get rid of this -1 because it's not needed anymore. Then our line end is going to be I plus 1, text plus off size. And if the buffer begin plus off size, this is I minus 1. So if I plus 1 is bigger than the text offset size, we're going to want to use the begin plus offset minus 1. Else, we use the end. Okay, Control E. Cool. So our text, we're going to actually change this now to be a string view. So let's change this and go string view. Say text, that's fine. Line start, line end, that's fine. But now we're going to want to apply our filters. Okay, so we're going to say apply filters. So we're going to say bool b is info. And this is where we go and do our find. Let's go here. This here. Whoops. That should be on this side. Cool. And we can change this, instead of being string, we can change this to be string view.mpause. Right? And just copy these all down. B is warn. Is error. Error. Warn. Error. Okay. Now, the reason why we want to do this is because, so say we're filtering out for only info. We need to know if this particular text or this line is the info, or it is an info text or info log, sorry, right? So that's what we're going to need to do. So that's, now our colors are going to be based on these. Bool is info, and then error is second, this one. Bool is error. And bool is warn, or B is warn. Also, we need these flags separate because this is what's going to help us filter. Okay? And this can all remain the same. But before we do the colors, now this is where we want to actually apply our filter in here. So we go if B is info and not MB show info. What this will do is now we're going to put continue here. Continue. So if it's an info log and we're not showing info, we're going to leave. Okay? And we want to do this for all types. All log types. So let's copy this. Say, or change this to warn. Warn. Or error. Cool. And that should help us filter those. And let's do another one. So we're going to do it for our search query. And it's going to be the same idea. So we're going to see if the search query is empty. If the search query is not empty, we want to see if we can find that search query in the log itself and go from there. But it's already going to be filtered here. So we want to do the search query after the filter as the check. If not ms search query is empty. So we're not empty. We actually have something in the query. And text dot find ms search query. So we're looking, is this search in the text that's passed? And then is it equal to std string view and pause. Control KD. Then it's going to say continue as well. If it can't find this query, the search query in that string, that text that's passed in, it will continue to the next one and won't populate it in our log display. Okay. And I believe that is it. Let's run it, see if that works for us. Okay, and same idea, open up the same project. Go to our logs, and we have all this. Look at that, it's not bouncing anymore. Nice and clean, go straight to the bottom. Let's go on, let's not show info. Awesome. There is no warnings, and let's not show errors. Cool. Now let's run the scene and then try a filter on the read only. So let's go scenes, load the regular. Cool. Run the script. Run it a few times. All right, go back to our logs and we'll just say read only. Now look at that. The only errors that we have now are the ones that contain the read only. So also, let's do one that has GL. No GL, let's go GL. So these ones all have GL in it, and everything else has been filtered out. Okay, let's not show our errors. Look at that. And it's working well. So now what we've done here is we have removed the dependency of the added log and removed log. We don't have to manually remove the logs anymore. We've also added in some filtering capabilities so we can filter out our messages, and if we don't only want to show errors, we can only show errors. We can still clear and we can still copy. All these still work. Now, if you want, you can actually move this to be a title bar, kind of like we did here, rather than doing it all in line. So let's take a look at the code one more time here. So I did this all inside here, inside of the draw function. However, if you feel so inclined, you can move this to the draw toolbar function. Okay. All right, and that's it for this video. In the next video, we're actually going to start going over the crash logger. So the crash logger is something that I've already created, and I added it in the background so we can actually log when we are crashing and get the Lewis stack and stuff like that. So we're going to go over this. The only problem is I was having an issue when I'm doing some tests on the runtime that I'm creating. If it crashes, it just silently does the log. It doesn't tell you to look at it or anything like that. So what we're going to do in the next video is we're going to quickly go over the crash logger and how it works. Then we're actually going to make another program that will get ran if it crashes. Okay, so what will happen is if the engine or the game crashes, it will trigger a signal to run a separate process or a separate executable that will tell us to go and look at the log, and it will show the last log in the file or the current reason for the crash. So that's what we're going to do in the next video. All right, so if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Also, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and that's it. Take it easy.